Major changes are coming to the Pittsburgh Penguins as a new report from an insider has revealed multiple players are being shopped by Kyle Dubas heading into this year's NHL entry draft. And some of these moves will completely change the outlook of this team heading into next season and has major implications on the development of younger players. We're going to break down what this all means in this episode of Penguins Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 68% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with your Pittsburgh Penguins, this is the place to be for all your daily Pittsburgh Penguins content. But Mark, let's dive right into it. We have major changes on the way, it seems like, at least for the Pittsburgh Penguins, with multiple reports and insiders reporting that, and this is from David Pagnotta, and he said that the Penguins are looking to sell off pieces. And Kyle Dubas is entertaining offers on Erik Karlsson, Rakell, and Bryan Rust. Bryan Rust, by the way, probably the most interesting name on this list, to me at least. We're going to get into that. And the Kings have been talking with them. Now, the Kings is an interesting one because, I mean, there's no world, I'll just start it off here, that they want to take Erik Karlsson with their current defense situation. We'll get into that. But to further that, from Marco, who does some great work as well, he said he reported on this back in January and got significant pushback/backlash. In the end, their main goal has been to wipe the entire roster of key veterans outside of Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, which, by the way, is an insane statement to make considering you literally just traded for Erik Karlsson, Mr. Kyle Dubas. But anyway, by July 1, to get younger and free up cap space, clearly there's been a shift in the mentality, the philosophy of the team over the course of the last 365 days. We know that, but this is exactly what they're trying to do. So they are trying to sell off a lot of these pieces: Karlsson, Rakell, Bryan Rust. So is any of these names, spark interest to you? Obviously, Bryan Rust, we're going to get into that. That's very interesting to me, and I actually wouldn't move off of him. I'll tease that, and we'll get into that in a second. But Rakell, to me, could make a ton of sense.
I mean, the big thing is we've seen Rakell go out and just have a career year playing with Sidney Crosby. We know Crosby likes playing with Rakell and Rust. We'll touch on Rust.
Yep.
3 points in 82 games. We know he has value. We've seen him during the Four Nations playing some of his best hockey in the past years. But the big thing I look at with Kyle Dubas, you give up quite a bit to bring in a guy like Erik Karlsson. I shouldn't say a guy, one of the best offensive defensemen in history. But with him not working with this team, if you can get any kind of positive assets without having to retain, I feel like this is a move. Yes, it does hurt your roster a little bit when it comes to production and veterans on the team. But with a lot of reporters coming out that every team is trying to get better, minus the Pittsburgh Penguins, who seem to be selling. I think if you can move on from Karlsson, if you can sell high on Rakell, this is not a bad thing for Dubas to do, unless you're looking at this team where you keep every other veteran, make everyone worse. Then you're stuck in the middle ground of this rebuild.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, Erik Karlsson, we had to look at his stats, and Bryan Rust, I think, is another interesting one to me. I want to bring up his stats because I wanted to dive into him in a second too. I mean, he had a great year with 65 points as well in 71 games, like almost a point a game player. Of course, the plus minus on the team not looking great. He is getting a little bit older, right? He's going to be 34 next season, or next offseason, I should say. This is 33-year-old season, but he's playing a ton of ice time, and this is a guy I'm not so sure you want to move off of because of the younger guys on the team. This is a guy that, another guy, at least, like Sidney Crosby, Malkin, for the next year at least, that some of the younger guys can learn from. So I'm not sure you want to trade him. And, you don't want to turn into Chicago either, where you have only young guys and nothing's happening. They have nobody to learn from either. And now Bedard looks like maybe he wants out of there as well. So you don't want to turn it into that type of situation. And listen, they have a ton of cap space already that they can weaponize, that they can use. So I could see them, moving off of a guy like Karlsson. That could make a ton of sense. Rakell, even, you can maybe not replace that scoring, but a younger guy can come in, get that experience, and try to replace that scoring. And Rakell had a career year. You would be selling high, like you mentioned, so it could make some sense. And again, Bryan Rust, he has 2 years left on this deal, or 3 years, I should say, heading into this season at 5.1. It's a manageable contract. It expires when he's 36. That's not awful. It's not like it's expiring when he's 40 or 41. I think that's very manageable for the minutes that he's been putting in. Karlsson, again, 2 years left. I feel like you can definitely trade this contract. I will maintain I have no idea why you traded for that contract. But the LA Kings, I wanted to bring them up because this is very interesting. And right now they have a lot of contracts they have to sign, of course, but they have almost $22 million in cap space. If you take a look at their roster, again, like I mentioned, makes absolutely no sense for them to trade for Erik Karlsson, but I can see them trading for a Brian Rust. They have a couple RFAs that they have to sign, as you can see there with Laferriere. But, Brian Rust could make some sense to the LA Kings. Even a Rakell would fit in very nicely on this team. They want to get better. They want to get deeper because, of course, for some reason, they just cannot beat the Edmonton Oilers in the first round of the playoffs. But how do you feel about maybe a Brian Rust heading to LA? Again, I just don't know if it makes much sense. I think you want to keep a guy like Brian Rust on this roster.
I mean, Brian Rust adds a lot of value. We can see him score 30 goals with his team. We know how well he works with Sidney Crosby, but in the other sense of this, Kyle Dubas is sitting down looking at a roster that failed to make the postseason, a roster that he wants to retool or rebuild, whatever his execution phase is. At this point, I think looking at these two guys and these guys in Rakell and Rust are two names that you can really sell high on. We've seen career years come from both of them. Yes, though, a lot of benefit comes from playing with Sidney Crosby, but if you can move two of these guys out, and it would suck moving on from both of these players, if you can get an overpayment, you can make a team that's worried or looking at free agency and not seeing what they want. If they offer you a first, a prospect, a roster player, and you can work this deal out, I think you can go out and continue this revolving door of getting a player, putting them next to Sidney Crosby, having a career year, moving him on at deadline or the year after. So from one sense, I understand moving on from Brian Rust might not benefit this team, but I think with the assets, looking at this team 3 years from now, this could be a major and crucial part of their development.
And let's say you do move on from Erik Karlsson. Obviously, Timmins, as you can see there, is a UFA. Joseph, we don't know what's going to happen with the defense core as of right now. I would imagine some of them will be back, but let's just say you move off of Erik Karlsson. We don't know what's going to happen with Kris Letang. If you do move off Brian Rust, I mean, Malkin's retiring at the end of this year. It is only Sidney Crosby left. I feel like you do still need some guys who've been around, done that on the team to teach these young guys to be able to make sure that they're coming up properly, developing properly, stuff like that, because I think that a lot of people don't put too much stock into that. They like to think of NHL teams like an NHL 25 video game GM mode, stuff like that, like kind of like the Chicago Blackhawks are doing right now. But if you look at the reaction from other teams, like this Devils fan really wants the Brian Rust to come over to the Devils, and he mentioned that it could be a fit for them. A lot of other teams would love Brian Rust, and it makes sense, right? Because he is a great player in that way that could produce for your team. And again, I am a little skeptical of it. And when you look at Rakell and what he's doing as well, especially last season, this is the guy that I think you trade off of. He's at an all-time high right now. He had a career year. This is the guy that if you want to free up $5 million, this is the guy you trade. And a lot of people might be, yelling at their TV or their tablets right now or their phones. Why would you trade this guy? He had a great year for us, right? Sell high on him, get whatever assets you can, and then, as we've been talking about, the execution phase of this retooling, you go out, spend the assets, get somebody else in return, keep building this team up. So I think that's kind of what you do at this point. Rust, again, I don't know if you want to trade him at this point. And the other interesting thing before we wrap up, Mark, is Brian Rust does have a no trade clause, or no movement clause, I should say, kicking in July 1st. So if they are going to make this move, it's got to happen this week or next week coming up. So that is another interesting thing into the whole equation. So just keep that in mind as well. But let us know how you feel in the comments about potentially trading off of one of these guys. It could be Brian Rust, Rakell, or Erik Karlsson. I know, Brian Rust, to me, I don't think you trade him, but I don't know. We want to hear what you have to say in the comments. So let us know down below. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything Pittsburgh Penguins.